dear friends. I'm Maureen Raveno, and I'm delighted to thank you once again for being with us in person or virtually for an extended edition of this 21st year of the Turner Winter Series, held since 2020 in the Robert H. Jackson Center's Kappa Theater. I offer this welcome on behalf of Greg Peterson, the founder and perennial host of this series these many years. Tonight, we have the pleasure of introducing Chautauqua Institutions' newly appointed Director for Religion, Robert Wilson Black, who has arrived at Chautauqua bringing with him decades of leadership at the intersection of faith, higher education, public discourse, and social change. A religion scholar, public speaker, administrator, and convener, he has served as Sojourner's longtime CEO and additionally as president and CEO of the Faith and Politics Institute, as well as co-founder and founding board chair of the National Museum of American Religion. He currently serves as a trustee at the University of Lynchburg. Across these roles, he has worked closely with scholars, clergy, policymakers, and community leaders to foster thoughtful dialogue, ethical leadership, and inclusive civic engagement. Robert holds a PhD and an AM in American Religious History from the University of Chicago, where he studied under renowned scholar Martin E. Marty, and his academic background also includes degrees from the University of Richmond. He is widely published and holds an honorary doctorate from Franklin College. On a personal note, I am pleased to say that I met Rob, as he is known, in 2020, when Joan Brown Campbell and I invited him to be part of the preseason conference that we held at Chautauqua titled Creating the Beloved Community. What a delight it is to welcome him back now in this eminent capacity, which is so near and dear to my heart. He has also been connected to Chautauqua in other ways over the years, as he will share with Greg in their conversation. Rob knows Chautauqua, loves it, and understands the sacred trust of stewarding its religious life and presence for many years to come. So please join me now in welcoming Robert Wilson Black in conversation with our host, Greg Peterson.
Welcome. This is a monumental day on many fronts. Most important, today, April 29th, 6:30 p.m., is 1 month from today will be the opening pitch at the Jamestown Tarp Skunks, which is May 29th at 6:30. And on that behalf, as a welcome to Chautauqua County, got to break it in, I am presenting to you and the camera the Jamestown Tarp Skunks hat, which only members who are the Department of Religion have. And Maureen has one, and now you do as well.
I can't wait to wear it. That's great. Put it right here.
So welcome.
Thank you for this. Beautiful.
Now, it's important because most people who will be are watching this are curious as to what's your sports team. So how would you answer that question?
Well, today I'm a Sabres fan, but that's
good.
That's
playing to the crowd.
I married a Buffalo gal. My wife Julie was born in Buffalo, and we've got lots of Buffalo Bills stories. But the story of today is really the Sabres, to be sure. I grew up a contrarian little boy in the Washington area, so instead of supporting the Washington football team, I supported the Dallas Cowboys because only one reason. Tom Landry and Roger Staubach were evangelical Christians, even though one of them was Catholic, and that was difficult for us. But we loved the Dallas Cowboys because of that. And I liked being a contrarian 6-year-old. Everyone else likes the Washington football team, and I like the Cowboys.
I'd keep that under. Good to Staubach and Landry, but I'd keep that under your hat when you're walking around. I wouldn't say America's team, the Cowboys, to your new audience at Chautauqua. The Bills, I'll give you some instruction on the Bills Mafia and how they react.
I would love to learn that, but I will not be discussing the Cowboys or the St. Louis Cardinals much when I'm in this area.
Well, since you are going to talk about the Cardinals, because I know that you have a relationship with an individual who was born February 18th, 1939, former shortstop coach, general manager in the Major League Baseball, and who was an executive for 4 World Series winners and 7 league champions. And his name is?
Dow Maxville, my grandpa's cousin, and what a guy. I mean, just to grow up watching him on television, I only got to meet him once, and Dow wouldn't remember me, although he lives in Florida very, very happily so. But watching your grandpa's cousin out there, pretty exciting as a kid.
So I have another gift for you, digging deep into my archives, which I have, autographs like Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb. But I'm going to give you this one, which is not either of those. But this is an autograph of your Dale Maxville. So that's yours. You can have that because, inevitably that will change your estate planning.
It will change the estate plan. That's so kind. That's a great photo. I don't have that photo of him, and I still don't have that. That's his signature, to be sure. Looks a little bit like my grandpa, as one would to one's cousin. Thank you so much. That means a lot. Great. I love watching old YouTube videos of Dow. Not doing so well in some of them, but doing pretty well in the others. Catching the last out of the World Series and such. Thank you so much, Greg.
Well, he was a Gold Glover. He was on 4 World Series teams, and so significant player. So there's a connect. So
near and dear to my heart. You're so kind.
Well, welcome to Chautauqua Institution. Now we know from the introduction from Maureen that you were part of a panel in 2020, but before that, did you know anything about Chautauqua?
So I first learned about Chautauqua in 2 ways. One is my PhD advisor, Martin Marty, was speaking here in the 80s and the 90s. And so I started working with him in 1991. So I learned about it from Marty. And then I started hearing about it from a guy named Dick Bechtold, his wife Nancy Dick Bechtold, and I guess their daughter is still on the foundation board. I've not met her, don't remember. But Dick Bechtold taught me about Chautauqua. So between Marty and the Bechtolds, who I still have a place there. As I'm heading towards the library on my right, I would run right into their house, which I would promise never to do. But the Bechtolds and the Martys got us interested. So we started with, with not a whole lot of money in our pockets, the free Sundays occasionally. And because my wife was born in Buffalo and my wife's parents are from the Wyoming, Warsaw area, and my grandfather-in-law was the historian for the county of Wyoming. We would go to the town of Wyoming in the county of Wyoming near Warsaw, and we would slip up here sometimes. So it's really great to have had those memories. And then I guess the second connection is the University of Chicago. One of my mentors and historians, really my boss, John Boyer, who's the dean of the college, he wrote a book about the history of the University of Chicago, where he says, the University of Chicago, founded in 1890, is really just a couple of things. It's Yale West, and it's Chautauqua. And we know that because of the way that they did extension education, and William Rainey Harper, was 15 years at Chautauqua while he was founding the University of Chicago. So between those, I really had no chance not to know about Chautauqua. When you add my love of music and the arts, it's game over. So grateful.
So it's that connection. I mean, we've heard about that. It's from the pulpit and from the about that Harper connection, Chicago. Have you had any reason to dig a little bit deeper as to the extent of that connection? Because I know there's some stuff in the archives that should talk about that.
I've been spending time with Ross McKenzie, heaven rest his soul. We just lost him, historian and religion head. And I spent some time with John Schmitz, who's also historian and archivist. And I've been spending a little bit of time with Emily, who's now in charge of the archives managing it. And I'll be with her tomorrow to dig deeper into William Rainey Harper's Red Book. But you can imagine he was seen by Vincent and Miller, the co-founders, across the lake at the Baptist gathering. And they said they had one thought, which is if we don't get this guy, Willie Harper, this is late 1800s, 1880s, that place across the way could make a run for us. And of course, they were not going to do any such thing in 1883, but they grabbed William Rainey Harper, spent 15 years here, a great Hebrew instructor from Denison and Yale, and he would take the train back and forth. Rich, I'll tell you one quick William Rainey Harper connection. I was reading the history of the University of Chicago, and they had a beautiful photo of his little to-do list. Willie Harper's to-do list, help to look for University of Chicago donors, meet with Mr. Rockefeller, and right down there, like number 13 or so, it says Athenaeum Project. It's just nice to see over those 15 years, William Rainey Harper. And the last thing I'll say about the connection is William Rainey Harper brought his friend Amos Alonzo Stagg. And we can talk about that as much as you like, but there are very few people in the history of American sports who have Amos Alonzo Stagg's connectivity to the formation of football and basketball over the years. And he was the athletics coordinator there at Chautauqua, and then went on to be a big University of Chicago coach. And so between those two, if you add in one more person, Shaler Matthews, who was the religion department head from basically the 19-teens up to 1934, William Rainey Harper, Amos Alonzo Stagg, Shaler Matthews, they were all University of Chicago folks. And they were founding Chicago based on Chautauqua, not Chautauqua based on Chicago, which is fun to think about.
We'll talk about fun. You also talked about 1934. The year prior, this is just a little footnote of life, but Jay Berwanger became the very first Heisman Award winner from, drumroll, the University of Chicago, not known as a football power these days, but nevertheless, that's the claim. And I did correspond with him for some time.
Did you?
Yeah, he was in an insurance type of.
The reason I did this, as everyone knows, that's the Jay Berwanger move. I got to meet Mr. Berwanger once.
Oh, did you?
And of course, as a grad student in 1991, I would, we would do this. Looks like today's young kids dabbing, but you're really moving into the Heisman Trophy. And he chuckled, appreciated that. I'm not sure if that's provable that the Heisman Trophy is based on the Berwanger classic move, but that was one he was quite known for. So that's so great, Jay Berwanger.
Well, the nice thing about here at the Jackson Center is if you say it 3 times, it is fact. So
that's great. Nancy Pelosi once told me, Rob, if I hear you say it, I'll say, I heard Rob say it. The next time I'll say, someone once said it. And the third time, it's mine. So it's similar.
Exactly.
A similar triumvirate for Nancy.
So, I'm looking at the fact that you had a bucket list. A bucket list early on in life, things you needed to check off. Like getting a signed Bible by
Jerry Falwell.
And attending a certain concert. You wrote this down. I'm not making this up.
Yeah. I've got about three concerts in my heart. You tell me the one you're remembering. I'll tell you mine.
Well, I'll lay out Amy Grant is one of them.
Oh, Amy Grant meant so much to my childhood, and so many Amy Grant stories I could bore you with. My wife would say she's the only person who she would know who's seen every extant, outstanding YouTube interview with Amy Grant and maybe read every one, has all her albums. And when I got to visit with her at her farm outside of Nashville, it was a real treat because she's a real true kind of woman of thought, God, philosophy, and care. And so I was able to work with the Chautauqua team, and there'll be a special announcement, I think, tomorrow related to Amy Grant, but I've got to spend a lot of concerts following her.
So if you are watching tonight,
don't say a thing.
That's right. It's a secret. It's a secret. No scoops tonight.
Okay. You scooped it, sir.
Okay. And there were 2 other concerts. I gave you Amy Grant. You said there were 3.
Well, spending time with Bono, who's, again, a big supporter of Sojourners and Jim Wallace over the years, where he's in the middle of this concert in Washington, D.C., and he says, we need more people like the Pope. We're talking about Francis at the time, and Jim Wallace of Sojourners. And all the entire crew were like, what in the world? 56,000 people in Washington, D.C. under Bono and U2, and that's such a precious moment and great. So whenever I see him every 2 years in Switzerland, I'll say, thank you for your support and care. And He's just been, I hope to get him to Chautauqua sometime.
Small name. And that's 2 concerts. Was there a third in all this?
One of my favorites was going to see the Rolling Stones in Tokyo because I was in the back row, the cheap seats, $20. And on my way in, I bought a scalp ticket, and I thought, oh no, I've just probably wasted $20. What do I know? And we all walk into the Tokyo Stadium in the back, and the crowd goes wild. And the wild was about like this. I was back in the back, and we were all going wild at the Rolling Stones. And then I tie that to one time I was at a reception. About 16 of us were dancing to a song called Moves Like Jagger. Some people may know it. And who am I dancing next to?
My wife.
I'm dancing next to Mick Jagger at this little cocktail party, and he is entirely focused on 3 other people who are models and not me. But it was fun to dance to Moves Like Jagger with Mick Jagger not long after having gone to his thing. So you can see I appreciate the arts, kind people, and little fun stories.
I don't know. There's no segue here at all. But you did also, one of your bucket lists was Billy Graham Crusade, George Beverly Shea, and
Billy Graham Crusade. I mean, Billy Graham's so powerful. We had so many Billy Graham stories at Sojourners because our founder, Jim Wallace, had so many great times with Billy Graham, including when Billy Graham was at Harvard, Marine, studied at Harvard Div School. And so Billy Graham came to Harvard and was asking students to talk with him, and the big stadium, much larger than even this gathering. And one young man said, "Tell us, Dr. Graham, for sure that Buddhists are going to hell." And Billy Graham said, that's above my pay grade. I don't determine those things. He said, "No, I want you to prove before all these people that people who don't accept Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior, follow other religions, are going straight to hell." And he said, I'm not able to do that for you." It was such a powerful moment. But when I saw him at RFK Stadium, I was just a teenager, and of course wrapped up in all that is a Billy Graham crusade, if you've not been to one. Tens of thousands of people. And I looked to my right, and during a sort of a more boring part of it, which was not Dr. Graham's sermon, I can tell you, I was reading my high school book, and the high school book I was reading was Great Gatsby. I just had to pass a test or something. I looked to my right, and who do I see? It's the Washington football team's coach, Joe Gibbs. And so I go on over to him and I said, "Mr. Gibbs, would you mind signing?" He said, "What do you have to sign?" "I just have this Great Gatsby book." So on the back of the Great Gatsby, I've got Joe Gibbs' signature. It probably says John 3:16 or something. But he was also just a wonderful person. So Billy Graham has meant so much to so many folks. When I took my kids over to North Carolina, I said, "Kids, this is the beginning of the driveway of Billy Graham." And they're like, "Sure, Dad, whatever." And then when we saw Ann Graham Lotz, Jim Wallace and I were talking with her, and she said, "You can come up and see Billy if you want." And I was so impressed by Reverend Jim Wallace saying, "I don't want to take Billy's time at this point in his life. I want to remember him as we knew him well." And I thought as a young staffer, oh, shoot, I would say, we're heading up the mountain, Ann. Let's get up there and go. But I saw a real a moment of humility and care in Jim when he said that. But Billy Graham's been a part of all of our lives, the good and the bad, watching the relationship with politics, the tough parts, the better parts, and demanding to integrate his gatherings, and then also putting the fear of God into all of us, as Just As I Am would play at the end of every sermon. So we got to see Billy Graham in all of his in his components.
I must confess, it's a confession right now, because it's right here, it wasn't planned, but I was probably the only man in the history of the Billy Graham Crusades to ever get thrown out of a Billy Graham crusade.
Now I got to hear it.
You got to hear it. And so here's the story. And so I took my mother and father, that was their dream, to go to Buffalo, or to see Billy Graham. So I got the suite, I mean, beautiful. And he's right there on second base, and that's where it's all stands. And I'm, of course, as shy as I am, I figured, all right, fine, here I am. And I'm going to go videotape, Billy Graham. I want to see how close I can get and what he looks like. So they have the call, come forward.
Don't make me sing the hymn right here live. I could do it.
Well, maybe this is background music. We can pull this in. So there I go down to the ballpark, onto the field, and I thought, for just pure videography, I'll find somebody who's probably got a tear in his eye and follow him. Just follow him up to Billy Graham, and where the crowd is gathering. And I'm following this guy and walk, and all of a sudden I get somebody grabs me on the shoulder, and he goes, "You can't do that. You've got to leave immediately." I turn around, and here's the biggest, largest, it had to be an Irishman, Catholic priest. He had the collar, everything, throwing me out. He ushered me out of the call of the Billy Graham Crusade out of the stadium. So I had to go back upstairs to explain to my parents, hey Mom, sorry, I'm that Baptist who fell off the train and
Reprobate son. That's a good story. I got nothing to top that for Billy Graham.
No. It's a little bit of YouTube where you can actually see me videotaping. All of a sudden, there's just so that was the end of the videotape of the Billy Graham Crusade. So I don't know what I'll probably edit this out, but I felt compelled in front of you to confess. So,
A confessional. I think confession's a lost art for a lot of Protestants, that's for sure. I wish we'd have some way to bring it back.
well, today was the day, and I was it. So, and you also met one of the more interesting transformational figures in his life, Chuck Colson. Talk about Chuck Colson. First of all, for the camera, not everybody may know who Chuck Colson, how his fame or infamy.
He was known as the Nixon's hatchet man. He went to prison for his role in Watergate, and in prison he got converted, found Jesus Christ, and he wrote a book called Born Again. It was on everyone's shelves, it seemed. It was certainly on my shelf. And footnote, his ministry went into prison work. And then also he had another ministry, which is really podcasts and radio work. And my godbrother, John Stonestreet, runs the podcast slash radio content piece. And I'm really a fan of the prison reform work. And another odd note is that my wife was a ghostwriter my Buffalo-born wife was a ghostwriter for Chuck Colson a couple of summers as a college student. Now, mind you, she would say she really only wrote the thank you letters. And one day, dating her, I found was waiting for me a personal letter from Chuck Colson, signed by auto pen, but I didn't know the difference, saying, I'm so pleased to know how wonderful. It just went on and on. I've kept this. It's obviously not from Chuck Colson. It's from her sneaking an auto pen. But she worked there as well. So we've got so many connections to Chuck Colson. And I went to hear him preach. I still got my notes from listening to Chuck. So you can tell I grew up a fundamentalist and then a conservative evangelical along the way. So these were, teenager moments for me that were quite important. He was.
Did you learn something about your wife to be about taking advantage of somebody else to get to you?
Well, Julie's the most straight-laced, amazing, wonderful person. And next fall, we're going to be starting our 40th year together. And she always winces when I say that because she said it makes me look old or feel old. But I'm so proud of our time together as a married couple. But Julie is so straight-laced and rule-abiding. She's a Presbyterian pastor in Alexandria, Virginia. I knew that was really out of the bounds of generally what she would do. So I thought, okay, maybe I've made it in Julie's book that she would break a rule or two.
How'd you meet?
So I was 19, Julie was 18, freshman at the University of Richmond. And our three children often ask me, like, how did you, first, fall in love with Mom? And I said, she was beautiful. They're like, no, it must have been more substantive than that. I said, well, it became more substantive because she's got a mind that's 10 times better than mine. But we were in a conversation about religion. No surprise. She went on to be a Presbyterian minister, and I went on to study religion. And we were discussing the Church of Latter-day Saints and having debates as 19 and 18-year-olds about the LDS Church. And then the rest is history. We fell in love her freshman year, my sophomore year, and I've tried to follow her around as a pastor, and she's my favorite preacher. Well, she actually knows that Otis Moss III is my favorite. Trinity, UCC, and longtime Chautauquan is my favorite preacher, but Julie's my second favorite preacher. So yeah, we fell in love there and had three wonderful kids, and those kids work at Chautauqua sometimes. It's great.
Sojourners. You are the former CEO of Sojourners. I think the world has heard the term, but perhaps doesn't understand the organization.
Yeah, so people might know the word sojourn, to travel for a day and to move, and then Sojourner Truth, A&I woman, wonderful. But Sojourners was imagined back in 1971. I'd like everyone here to think about what were the 4 topics you were not supposed to talk about if you were a Midwest conservative evangelical in 1971. Well, you can probably guess them. And that's, by the way, Sojourners was founded on those 4 things. So it's voices of women and women's empowerment, anti-poverty, talking about poverty, race, and war. So Sojourners was 13 people. Jim Wallace, Joan Bissett, and a bunch of other amazing folks. Joan lives here in New York near the Finger Lakes. And they got together and they decided, we're going to read our Bible and not just thump it. We're going to actually go in and look. And they found 2,000 verses that talked about poverty. And not as many verses on the hot topics you might be able to fill in the blanks on. And so what they did is they started to cut out from that Bible all of the verses about poverty and God's preferential option for the poor. You might say if you're a Latin American theologian in the Southern Hemisphere. And they would go around and hold up this book at talks and say, the American gospel is full of holes. So it was a beautiful way to start. And Sojourners went on to be a well-known magazine, and folks like John Stott, an important theologian in England, would be supporters of them, and all kinds of evangelicals. In fact, Billy Graham sat our founder down and said, just one-on-one, and said, people are going to try to divide us, old evangelicals and young evangelicals. We're not going to let them do that, are we? Let's not let that happen. So even Billy Graham, and Sojourners is a magazine who took it hard on Billy Graham. They would take it hard on Carter administration, anybody. Sojourners is there to read the Bible, almost like Karl Barth, newspaper in one hand, Bible in the other. Read the Bible and call forth the gospel of people who love Jesus, love the Bible, love the church. And by the way, that didn't go down so well from liberal secular folks left of center for Sojourners, because they said, what's this whole thing about Jesus and the Bible and church? That didn't make any sense. And the folks to the right of center would say, I'm not sure we read the Bible that way, Sojourners. We would say, welcome to reading the Bible in a new way. So Sojourners went on to still have over 50 years of putting out a magazine, of calling people to action, and being an inspiration for so many folks whose names you would recognize, including ones I've already noticed, but it's noted. And we would work across the aisles. We would work across the aisle with folks in Prison Fellowship, and Mark Rogers, Clapham Group, caring for those who are less fortunate around the world. And we worked with a lot of folks along the way to do that. So we're there as a light in the darkness when we could. We had so many interesting fans. One of my favorite stories to tell is I was at the press club in Washington, D.C. at some other gathering, and it's the gathering where they would give you 2 drinks, so you didn't, 2 drink tickets. So I was talking to this amazing intellectual of a woman, and she said, what do you do? I said, I work for Sojourners. She said, I've loved Sojourners since the Carter administration. I said, well, that's an interesting way to say that. Tell me about it. So she's following Sojourners. This is very important social justice stuff, the gospel. And anyway, she says, by the way, I've lost my drink tickets. Can you buy me, I said, I've got an extra drink ticket. We went over to the bar. I get the drink. And I said, by the way, your hair is, I can't see your name tag. I haven't, don't got a sense of who you are. She said, oh, I'm Christy Hefner. I'm the CEO of Playboy. And I said, well, Ms. Hefner, it's a pleasure to meet you. I think I'll be leaving now. I went out and called my wife, and I said, I just bought a drink for the CEO of Playboy, but don't worry, there's nothing you can make of that from there. But so later I got a chance to know.
Just know full well that's our secret.
For the internet. But she's an amazing person who's got her own story. But some fascinating people have loved Sojourners along the way, from the Obamas to other folks. So.
Along the way, I know your paths have crossed people who are notables, who are racial justice, such as Julian Bond, Brian Stevenson. Talk a little bit about those 2 guys.
Julian Bond was an amazing speaker for me when I was a young university vice president, and we would sit around like Maureen and others have done in green rooms, and you've done many times. And Julian Bond's talking to me about someone he's just met. I said, oh, that sounds like Taylor Branch. He said, it's exactly who I'm talking about, Taylor Branch. And I said, tell me some other stories. He said, he had this one story I'm sure Julian Bond told everyone, but it was fun. He said, I was walking on the campus at Morehouse College with a young Dr. King. And Dr. King tells me, Martin King says, I've been having these nightmares, about all the problems in the world. And Julian said, I looked at him and said, Dr. King, you're not having nightmares. You're having a dream. And he always looked for a chuckle, but then those of us who actually knew that I Have a Dream comes from a woman who had developed that concept, and Dr. King was appreciating her good words. We always got a kick out of that. But Julian Bond was a fascinating person and a great justice leader. And when you talk about Bryan Stevenson, I'm trying to think who would be closer to a Mandela Tutu combination than Bryan Stevenson. And every time I'm with Bryan Stevenson, I come away with two thoughts, and you may as well. Bryan Stevenson says, slavery never ended in the United States. It only morphed into the mass incarceration system. And the second thing he says, if you ever try to solve a problem, a social problem, and you are not going to be proximate to it, in close proximity, you will never solve it. And Bryan Stevenson's just so many wonderful stories, and the work he's done at EGI. He's also been to Chautauqua, and he was one of the faith and politics folks we would have every year for our crossing of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. He would give our keynotes, and he's amazing because Bryan Stevenson would give this talk in Alabama, and sitting right next to him is conservative Republican Senator Katie Britt, who's a fascinating person in her own right and a leader, and she was always kind enough to speak. And then she would stand up right after Bryan Stevenson, and Katie Britt would say, and I'd love it if she gave the talk at Chautauqua, Katie Britt said, there is no place for racism in Alabama. People clap. And then she says, there is no place for white supremacy in Alabama. And everyone rises to their feet. So to watch Bryan Stevenson, known as somewhat left of center, possibly characterized, and then Katie Britt, no doubt. It's an amazing story that Bryan Stevenson has, and would all appreciate learning more about him and Equal Justice Initiative. He now has, I would call them 4 different types of museum experiences, 2 outdoors and 2 indoors. I'd recommend to everyone to visit Montgomery, Alabama, and such a fascinating place down there. And we spend a lot of time there at the Faith and Politics Institute. But Bryan Stevenson, we've had real inspired by him for many, many years.
You're an author. And one of your books is The End of College: Religion and the Transformation of Higher Education in the 20th Century, 2021. What's it about, and what was the critical response to it?
It's about 2 things. One is I wanted to know, okay, we study religion in colleges. Where did that come from? It come from a Sunday school movement, like Chautauqua World? Why do we study stuff in college, and how do we start studying it? And so I wanted to find the origins of how religion departments were created in American colleges. So that's one part of the story. That happened 1935, 1960, at the same time that colleges, the college model in America, which you could all probably recite what the college model is, was moving to a university model. The college model, you're residential, it's small, you're being inculcated with important values, you share a bit of a demographic, and knowledge is to be shared, where universities, we're looking to study almost everything, and we're looking to look for new knowledge, as opposed to merely transferring it. It could be more disparate in terms of living situations and fewer shared values. Why are we studying religion in colleges at about that time? Well, what happened is the Yale and Harvard and Princeton and in some ways Chicago all decided, wait a minute, we want to have religion be a more central part of our university. And sure enough, that didn't stick, as you all may know. But what did stick was the study of religion. The front page of the New York Times, above the fold, right a couple days before Hiroshima and Nagasaki, is the Yale committee has decided, we have determined that Yale does not know exactly what it believes. We want to more firmly study what we believe, and we're going to create a religion department. After that, you get God and Man at Yale with Buckley. But the story is really twofold. How do you move from college to university model, which makes some people wonder, gosh, couldn't we go back to the old model to instill values as opposed to just seeking truth where truth can be found? And the other is, how in the world do you get the study of religion, the academic study of religion? And the critical acclaim was just wonderful for folks like Eboo Patel to read it and to care about it and to blurb it. And the Dartmouth Religion Department, or at least some of them, read it and were kind enough to invite me to give the Dartmouth oral lectures where all of my great heroes, you know that, remember watching, was it Sesame Street or Electric Company? One of these things is not like the other.
Yeah.
When you look at the list of people giving the Dartmouth oral lectures, there's all of my great heroes in religion, and then there's me. So it was an honor, but it was really wonderful to be able to speak around the country and to share the end of college, and glad to be using those thought lenses about how important religion is or is not in culture and how it can be in institutions like Chautauqua. Bring that lens here with me, with my work.
List of people that you succeeded to in Chautauqua, in most recent memory with Mackenzie, Joan Brown Campbell, Robert Franklin, Bishop Robinson, and kind of sort of you. And where does this all fit in your mindset?
Well, one, these are the great saints of old, and then when they had people leading the religious programs like Maureen Ravinia, you've got folks who are really pushing and driving, and so great gratitude for the great giants, appreciation for the pillar that Chautauqua sees religion as. And I like to reflect on what was Shaler Matthews trying to do for those 22 years until 1934, when he realized the country's taking a neo-Orthodox, more conservative turn, a la Niebuhr and company. I'd love to talk more about Niebuhr, but he was concerned about that, and so I watched where they're going. So my question is, what was Shaler Matthews trying to do? What was Ross Mackenzie trying to do? What was Mr. Lowe trying to do? What was Mr. Johnson trying to do? What were they all trying to pull off? Mr. Jackson, what were they trying to figure out? So my question is, what was Robert Franklin, Gene Robinson, Joan Brown Campbell? I got a sense in 2012 she brought us in to figure out how to move from Abrahamic faiths to multi-faith. And in a similar way that Ross Mackenzie was trying to move in 89 to 99, how do we move from Christian general there? And of course, the previous folks had to figure out pretty early, 1880s, how to move from Methodist to Prairie and Revivalist in general. So my central question, Greg, is what does Chautauqua need to both strengthen the pillar here and also pay attention to what's going on externally? What can we do externally to be of use and help for the body politic, the body religion politic, to be useful there? So that's a matter of discernment, listening, trying out a few things, and paying attention. We spent a lot of time at the University of Chicago and Martin Marty talking about the secularization thesis. Are things getting more secular? Less secular in what way? And so that's a whole nother 2-hour lecture. But it's important to pay attention to where religion is seen. We were taught to find religion just about everywhere. So we have religion detectors, and so it'll be interesting to see how I can serve Chautauqua in that way. But it's an honor to be in just the same sentence as these folks. Obviously, you don't feel like you deserve it, but you want to reach for it so that you can serve in a way that you would one day be able to attain something close.
Undergirding all of those names in a recent memory has been Maureen Ravinia. Talk to me about it. Have you reached out to Maureen, and what has she meant to you?
I got to meet Maureen in 2012 when Joan Brown Campbell invited about 30 or 40 of us, I should say Joan Brown Campbell, Maureen probably invited us, to come and talk about how you move from Abrahamic faiths, three, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and how do you move into multi-faith. And so that was the first gathering that I got to meet Maureen at. And also, I've had the last 9 weeks, I can tell you, Greg, I've lost track, and I've told Maureen I've lost track of the people who said, hey, David Saperstein, hey, say hi to Maureen, hey. So it's been wonderful to see that legacy. And so I'm really, I hate to say standing on the shoulders of giants, because I hope I'm not hurting their shoulders and making them sore, but I'm certainly grateful for all that Maureen built. And certainly I've already had enough meetings. My book is now full of scribbles of wisdom I've learned from her, and what gratitude I have for her, and I'll be relying on her wisdom for as long as I'm allowed to stay at Chautauqua. But it's been great to watch what she does and how she's done it. So really grateful for her.
This is personal to you. And during the interview process, without getting into a lot of details, what was the question you were asked by the committee that you didn't see coming?
Rob, how would you address the differences where we are in our country right now? We're fractured and religiously. And so I just said, I'm just going to try to tell a story. And the story was twofold. My parents were fundamentalist Baptists, wonderful people of God, and I, of course, owe them everything, Ken and Kitty. But I remember sitting down once with Ken and Kitty and my parents and try to figure out, okay, they basically probably think I'm going to hell, and I think, I'm not headed in that direction. And they were gracious in so many ways. They didn't believe technically in women ministers, but by the end of their time with my wife, they said, Julie is our pastor. And so they're very gracious in some ways, but we're at the opposite ends of many ways of thinking about faith. And I said to them, I have finally come to the realization that you have much more belief than I will ever have. You are great believers. I dream of believing like you, Mom and Dad. I would love to be a believer like you. I was raised to be a believer like you, but you have much more belief. But I will always have much more faith than either of you combined times 10. And they said, what do you mean? We have faith too. You don't need faith. I need faith and have faith, and I'm there. And for some, that's a false dichotomy and kind of thin. But it was a breakthrough moment where they said, our son aspires to deep belief, and he has great faith, because faith for me is so vital. And the second story I'll tell is I finally realized, Mom and Dad, as I was sitting at dinner, I said, you see that kitchen over there for the restaurant? They said, yeah. I said, if there was a fire, and I said there was a fire in that kitchen, what would I do? They said, you would run right toward it to try to help people. I said, yeah. I said, what if you told me, Rob, there's no fire in that kitchen? You are mistaken. What would I do? They said, you wouldn't pay any mind. You would just go there and take care of it. I said, well, Mom and Dad, here's the thing. You see everyone basically in flames on their way to hell. You see a fire everywhere. And if I say something to you about Mom and Dad, I don't think that's exactly the case. Some of those Catholics actually are Christians. What would you say? And they would say, well, we wouldn't pay you any mind. We would just try to go save them. And I said, exactly. So you see me as not being belief-filled enough, and I see you as wasting your lives burning this one precious life you've been given. And you see me burning for eternity. And I said, let's just make a deal. Let's love each other for how we care about the rest of the world. I want to help the rest of the world. You want to help the rest of the world. We are each lining up fire trucks to care for every single person. We just see different fires in different places, but we see fire everywhere. And we finally were able to make, between those two conversations, make a faithful life together. I'm, of course, a lifelong follower of Jesus and a Protestant Christian, a pastor's spouse. And I think we came to a good way of being with each other. So I shared that story as one way in my interview of saying I understand some divides. Some divides I don't know intimately, but I hope to learn about those. There's divides within many faiths that I've enjoyed learning about, as it were.
So your first effort at Chautauqua was to probably literally walk across the lake to Point Chautauqua, where the Methodists had crushed the Baptist over there at Point Chautauqua, and apologize. I mean, is that your first thing you do?
It is. It also reminds me of my favorite women ministers joke, which is the Baptist ministers, the Methodist ministers, asked the new woman minister to come out fishing with them. You probably heard this. She goes out fishing with these couple of guys. While she's out there fishing, she gets a call from one of her parishioners. Someone's in the hospital. Someone's in the hospital. She immediately walks right across the water, right on water to the shore to make the hospital visit. The two guys talking to each other say, she can't even swim. Women ministers can't even swim. Right, that's my first task was not to thankfully have to walk across to the Baptist. Now we have a wonderful Baptist house and a Methodist house and all kinds of other 12 or 14.
You brought the Baptist within your organization to Buy Point Chautauqua.
I grew up Baptist, love them to death.
You served as president and CEO of the Faith and Politics Institute, as well as co-founder and founding board chair of the National Museum of American Religion. First of all, where is the National Museum of American Religion, and what is it?
It's in formation. You can find it at nmar.org in its virtual set. We've been working for several years to figure out how would we create a museum in the nation's capital, ostensibly, where people could come and learn about the history of religion in America. Not from a particular angle per se, a fairly balanced, nuanced way, except that we celebrate in this museum, which you could see online, in preparation for a bricks and mortar one day, celebrate the freedom to practice religion as one of the great American innovations, inventions. And so the National Museum of American Religion has brought together religion scholars, practitioners, to bring together to address some of the most complicated and difficult things. So we've had great advisors, Lonnie Bunch, who heads up the Smithsonian, and a lot of wonderful professors helping us. And we're only $100 million short to create a bricks and mortar, but we do a lot of programming where we really try to help people understand the importance. What happened to religion when it comes to America, and what happens to America when religion comes to it. And so we've got the most broad, amazing set of advisors. People look at our advisors and they say, how did you get those two people of that particular religion to talk to each other? So, well, they may not talk to each other, but they're all invested in how we can basically nourish this concept in America where we're free to practice and what that means. And our point is religion can heal, religion can kill, religion can harm, religion can take good care and bind up wounds. How do we increase, of course, the binding up and reduce the harm, to be sure. And the museum, our dreams for it is that people would leave the museum. If you leave the Museum of the Holocaust, the Shoah, or Yad Vashem in Israel, you have one phrase on your mind, and that's never again. What might be the phrase if you're leaving the Washington, D.C. National Museum of American Religion? We're still working on that phrase, but like, wow, I never knew that. Wow, I want to protect this wonderful thing that we have to practice. How do we care about it? So yeah, it's an interesting new project. And right now we're doing online programming. But it was my colleague Chris Stevenson, Tammy Schneider, they're involved in that. I don't spend as much time with that anymore, but it was wonderful to help found them.
I'm trying to find this segue, but there probably isn't other than conversion and the lack of conversion and Scott Norwood. Now, Scott Norwood, I know you've got a story, and I want to get it out. I want to extract it. Being a Buffalo Bills fan, being in Tampa Bay Stadium, watching it wide right, I'm anxious to hear what your connection with Scott Norwood is.
It's a very simple, wonderful story. With my father-in-law and mother-in-law go to watch the Buffalo Bills games sometimes at this Washington, D.C. haunt. It's in Northern Virginia. And they have their beef on wick, watch the Bills win. It's great. One day they come out of this wonderful game day, and they see a note on their car windshield. And it says, I am so sorry, I will pay for any damages. I've hit your car. Here's my insurance, here's my number. I'm sorry I hit your car. Signed, no joke, Scott Norwood. So my father-in-law is thinking, you're having trouble hitting, but you hit my car so easily. Such a sweet, sweet person, a sweet note. I think he may have used language more colorful, like you hit the broadside of a barn, but why my car? But very nice, a very nice guy. And I said to him the other day, did you keep that note? I said, no, we didn't keep the note. I'd love to have that note back.
Why not?
But what a fascinating person and a great history.
Well, it is. You are taking the mantle as the Department of Religion, and your season has not started yet. What has been your challenge here as you've looked at schedules, speakers, because really come Sunday and at 2 o'clock every day, it's sort of your show. Give us a sense of what it's been like.
Well, for starters, Eugene Sutton's the senior pastor, and Sonia Sutton, who's now our interim sacred music director, they've done great work, and Eugene Sutton has wonderful lineup of chaplains. So I came in with that already completed. For me, the challenge is threefold. One is, how do I learn and articulate the understanding of Chautauqua as having religion as a pillar? Why don't we say religion is the roof? Well, roofs can protect you from some things, but not as much support. Why not a foundation? Well, you can't see a foundation. A pillar is beautiful, and you can visibly see it. So, not a roof, not a pillar. What's the metaphor for it being a pillar and not a foundation? And why not a wall? A wall doesn't provide as much support. So, a pillar is very important. So, my first challenge is, how do I think about religion as a pillar? What does that mean? So, I've tried to immerse myself in history, but when you begin with those chaplains already lined up, which is a wonderful set, then you look at, okay, I need to bring in, invite 32 or so speakers to finish out the 36 for the season. So that brings me to my second challenge, which is I first go to some amazing people I've loved and cared about over the years, Barbara Brown Taylor, Parker Palmer, Noah Paul Stuckey, Peter, Paul, and Mary, and try to convince them to come out of semi-retirement and come back. So, I get lucky with some and not as lucky as well. But the third is the challenge of having a nice mix. You want folks who have some conservative voices in there, some contrarian. You want to have a nice mix in terms of gender, ethnicity, religious background, complexity within faith stuff. So we might have an amazing Naomi Riley, who used to write Houses of Faith there for the Wall Street Journal, maybe known as a little bit right of center. And then you have Jeremy Ben-Ami, founder of J Street, on the left side of a few things when you talk about the amazing Jewish community, the Everett Center and the Chabad Lubavitch House, amazing Jewish community at Chautauqua. You try to have that mix. And how do you do that with the different folks? So you have the new incoming head of Christianity Today, Ms. Martin, coming in, and then you've got Terrence Johnson and Yolanda Pierce. So you've got a variety. And people at Chautauqua like to think it's the thinking person's vacation. They like to think and be introduced to new ideas that spark something, but without throwing bombs into the middle of things. We like to spark interest and passion, but being thoughtful folks. So I think that's the third challenge, is how do you get a nice mix? So what's the metaphor? How do I say goodbye to all these folks I'd really love to have back, but they say, I can't come back anymore. We've retired from Chautauqua. And then getting that nice mix in there. And I've reached out to Joan Brown Campbell's granddaughter to give me some ideas for 2027. How do I get the next gen? So the last thing I'll say is I try to get as many people as possible who are younger than me. So there's the youth element as well. But those are three great challenges to have.
So what's the elevator speech? You get on the phone and you know somebody you'd like to, and they say, what are you talking about? What's Chautauqua? What's your elevator speech?
Elevator speech varies based on who I'm talking with, to be clear. For some, it's the thinking woman's vacation. For others, it's Disney World for religiously thoughtful intellectuals. For others, it's the great grandmother of all ideas festivals. There's no TEDx or TED or Aspen Ideas Festival without Chautauqua. So I basically try to appeal to each person. Most folks know it. They'll say, I've been there, I've heard, it's wonderful, folks I'm talking to. And if they don't know it, the elevator pitch is really come and talk to several hundred, if not thousands of people who really care about your expertise regarding religion. And I pitch them on the theme, the importance of the theme. So power women, your Bishop Buddy and Dinah Butler Bass and Susanna Heschel and Yolanda Pierce, 4 power women. I say to them, the theme for the week is women who've had a significant impact in their world. And I talk about the sub-theme for the interfaith lectures as well. And so I vary it based on what they know about Chautauqua, what they need to know about Chautauqua. And then I pitch them on who the audience will be and the amazing Chautauquans who will be there to be in dialogue with you, which I've gotten to enjoy since the late 90s, so I have a little experience if they don't have experience. And then that last piece is really important. You're going to be here with a bunch of other speakers. We're creating community at the Hall of Missions, which Maureen and others and Joan Brown Campbell did for all those years. As well. So we're creating that kind of community. You'll want to be a part of that. And some of them talk back to me and say, yeah, my colleagues have spoken here. They've really loved it. And they got to sell books and and engage people. And some people ask me, can I do some fundraising while I'm there? I'm like, they're going to fall in love with your content. This is not the time to be focused on that. But it's a wonderful pitch. Makes the elevator a lot better. And sometimes if the elevator pitch doesn't resonate, which is rare, I try to learn what they're interested in engaging Chautauqua on, if that makes some sense.
Fetzer, Detroit Tigers, I spent a lot of time in Detroit, spent time at Tiger Stadium, and he was part of that world.
John Fetzer, I mean, what a fascinating visionary. He left a lot of money to help to create a community of practice that would try out different things there in the Kalamazoo area. And the Fetzer Institute has been a supporter of so many wonderful projects in the field of religion. It's where you get support for Krista Tippett, Parker Palmer, and all kinds of innovative things. John Fetzer himself is a fascinating person. I've read at least 2 biographical pieces, if not books, about him. Obviously, as an owner, Mr. Radio, a radio man, he really cared about the experimental. He was curious about experimenting on the edges. And I tell folks who say, oh, yeah, but John Fetzer was involved in some pretty wild stuff in the 60s and out there. And I say, but John Fetzer wouldn't be involved in those things if it's 2026. He'd be finding what our wild things are regarding religion, faith, and community. And the Fetzer Institute is just one of the most amazing groups that you should check out if you haven't checked them out. And they're looking really to improve the state of the world and using the importance and understanding of faith and religion and religions and spirituality writ large to really tackle everything from loneliness to fractured community. And a really lovely, Bob Boyster's the head of it, but we've got a great board there who cares about it. And so John Fetzer, I mean, you can do lots of stuff with your hundreds of millions of dollars, right? You can blow it away into the wind, or you can create something that's really of value. And obviously, Chautauqua supporters, Fetzer and others have done that. So Fetzer's right up there with Lily and a bunch of other folks who've really dedicated themselves to caring about religion in America.
Oh, well, there you go.
Maureen points out that the Fetzer Institute was the sponsor of the 2012. Amazing. And when you think about this region, I just have to say, where we are right now in the Jackson Center is an unbelievable place. And it's been great to be here for a couple of programs. I really appreciated the Nuremberg film. And I've told several folks about this and to connect them up with this place as well. So I should mention it's great to be here. And an honor to be in, I believe it's the only institute, center, museum, all combined action group of a Supreme Court justice.
Independent, it's the only independent.
Only independent one, and it's such an amazing place. I look forward to spending more and more time here, but it's great to live half of my year in this region. Honored.
You evoke a tremendous amount of enthusiasm.
No.
I mean, and Chautauqua is going to be the beneficiary of your presence.
Oh, thank you.
And that's exciting. And so as you look in the camera and people are now watching you for the first time, many of them, what's your message to current Chautauquans and those that you would like to entice to come here?
Come and see. I am here to provide and to bring the most stimulating talks that I can. Third is, please bring me your ideas. My list of 300, now growing to 400, is growing because of you all. And the fourth is, open your mind to the beauty of the themes. I used to come to Chautauqua maybe 23 years ago, and I would say, oh, I can't believe I'm coming for X, Y, Z theme. I don't care about the brain or water or revolution. Every time I would come, the excellence of the program and the arts, the theater, the music, right? The choral music. It was so powerful. So I would say come and see, because what we're preparing for you this summer is, like many other summers, outstanding. And stay in dialogue. Help the best religion scholars and preachers get taught into a community. They get brought along. It's the call and response. I'm calling, you respond. Teach me your take on Chautauqua, and I'll teach you mine.
Well, hopefully tonight has been the call, and the response will be your opportunity to see Rob Wilson Black live and Chautauqua this upcoming year. So, thank you.
What a treat, and thanks for all the amazing gifts.
Okay, well,
Fantastic.
Plus, we have the Tarp Skunks hat, and, right here, Brandy. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.